Hello, welcome to Z Marie Design. Let's create this Modissimo inspired boho bag that can also be worn as a backpack. So to get started, you will need 2 squares of fabric measuring approximately 34 by 34 inches. And make sure that it's a fabric that drapes really nicely. I just pieced my main fabric with these upcycled upholstery fabric remnants. So that's my main fabric, and the red fabric is my lining. You'll also need a zipper that's at least 14 inches in length, and you'll need some binding that measures at least 75 inches long. So I'm using some upcycled quilt binding that's 2.5 inches wide, and I cut my zipper tabs to be 3 inches. And so to create my binding, you just fold it in half, make a crease, fold those outer linings to the crease, fold again, and press. So I will attach these zipper tabs to each end of the zipper, and then I'll sew that in place. So once I've sewn that zipper tab in place, I will just cut those ends of the zipper tab to meet the width of the zipper. And you can set your zipper aside for right now. Initially, I was going to use this lace as the binding for my zipper, but I didn't feel it was substantial enough, so I opted to use just a piece of the binding for the binding strip for the zipper. I'll show you that later. So the first step is to take your main fabric and your lining fabric and put it wrong sides together, pin it in place, and you will sew around each of the 4 sides. I used a serger to serge my ends together. You don't have to, you just take a 1/2 inch seam allowance, or you can use a zigzag stitch. So next is to find the center of your fabric panel. And I know where mine is because I pieced that fabric together, and I measured my zipper and I found the center of that zipper and put it in the center of the main fabric there. And I'm going to cut the binding 1 inch longer on each side. So my zippers measures 14 inches. I cut my binding strip 16 inches. Found the center of the binding strip, and I'm going to pin it in place on the center of the fabric panel. And then I'm going to sew on the crease part of that binding strip. And then I'm going to press it, and I'm going to fold it over twice, pin it down, and then I will sew the edge of that binding strip. You can also use a decorative stitch at this point as well. And do that on both sides of your fabric panel. So now that my binding strip is in place, I'm going to attach my zipper. I'll find the center of the zipper and the center of the binding strip, pin it in place on one side with your zipper teeth facing up, and you'll stitch down that side. And then with your fabric wrong side up, you will bring your other end of your fabric panel to meet the other end of your zipper, and your zipper teeth are facing up, and pin it in place, and you'll sew down that side as well. So next you will take your binding strip. You'll measure all the way around your opening there of your fabric panel. Mine measures about 48 inches. So after I press my binding strip, I'll measure. I cut 48 inches. I just rounded it up to 50 because this binding strip will also create the part of your handle. So after I cut the 50 inch binding strip, I sew it together to connect the edges. Find the center of my bag again. Find the center of my binding strip. I'm going to put the raw edges of my fabric panel inside my binding strip, and I'll pin my binding strip. So I'm going to sew the entire strip all in one sewing. So at the edge there of the tip of your fabric panel, you will bring the one front side to the back side and pin it in place. That forms a triangle. And you'll do that on both sides of your fabric panel and pin it all the way down to where your zipper tab meets. Then you will continue to attach that binding strip to that part of the fabric panel. And then you'll pin it in place. I try to make sure that the end of that zipper binding, that it was covered with this binding strip that I'm putting on now, and it was too short. So I think the next time I do this, I will make sure that my binding strip for my zipper, that it goes out further than an inch on each side. Maybe it goes out at least 3 inches on each side. That way I can catch it when I put this binding strip on. As you see, I'm trying to finagle there with it to get that zipper binding, to get it underneath the binding strip there that I'm putting on, and it wouldn't fit. So next time I'll just bring it out a little further. So pin it in place, and you'll notice that once you get to that pointy edge there of the fabric panel, that you'll have some binding strip left over. That forms your handle. So just continue to pin up the binding strip, and then you'll sew all the way around that circle there, attaching the binding strip to the fabric panel and attaching the binding strip to create the handle. So now you still have a piece that's open there. You'll find the center of that fabric panel again with the binding strip. Bring it up to meet your tab that's on your zipper and sew it down. Then you'll have 2 openings again. Bring those openings there, bring it closed, as close to that zipper tab as you can get. Pin it in place, and then you'll sew that part down as well. So you see that's the center part of the fabric panel that I brought underneath the zipper tab. Sewed it down, closed in those other openings, had them to meet one another, sewed that part down, and I just sew it right on top of the binding strip. You still have small openings there, but not enough that your belongings will fall out. And your boho zipper bag is all done. Now this bag, it holds quite a bit. It's a pretty big bag as it drapes, especially when it's draping across as you're holding it as a backpack. I think the next time I do this, I will put a larger zipper so that the zipper opening is a little wider too. I hope I explained this enough. It took me several days to figure out how to put that binding strip on. If you don't understand it, just leave me a comment in the comment section and I'll see if I can help walk you through it. So I hope you enjoy this project and I hope you give it a try. Thanks for watching.